Stay tuned for episode 47 of Veteran on the Move as I'm talking with Marine veteran Paul Miller, founder of the Entrepreneur Warrior.
Hey everybody, this is Eric with Family Adventure Podcast, and you are now listening to Veteran on the Move with Joe Crane, your pathfinder to freedom.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that job trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
Paul Miller was a Marine for 11 years on active duty, including assignments as a drill instructor, water survival instructor, combat photographer, and embassy security guard. Since leaving the Corps, he has become a multi-unit restaurant franchisee and started 2 more companies from scratch, including a multimedia company and the Entrepreneur Warrior. The Entrepreneur Warrior will help veterans follow their entrepreneurial dreams by sharing his experience and that of other successful entrepreneur warriors. We will inspire you, we will show you it's possible, and we will show you how to make it happen. Paul, thanks for being here today. Welcome to Veteran on the Move, and give everybody a bit of an intro. Before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did in the Marine Corps?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Well, I guess one of the great things about being in the Marine Corps is you can have lots and lots of jobs within one career. And I started out as a combat photographer, and guess I have a little bit ADD in me, and wanted to go into some more challenges. So I signed up for embassy duty, where I was a Marine security guard, our American embassies. And went on to do a couple other B billets, including drill instructor, Parrish Island, South Carolina, water survival instructor, and finished up with a tour at the Pentagon, archiving multimedia.
Okay, sounds like you had covered a broad range of topics and interesting things there in the Marine Corps. That is one beauty about the Marine Corps. I'm sure it's somewhat the same in other services. You know, regardless of MOS, you're a rifleman first, so you can always end up doing other various jobs. And so I understand you got out around 92, shortly after Desert Storm wrapped up. What was your transition like out of the Marine Corps?
Well, I was based down in Quantico, Virginia at the time, and it was probably pretty typical to a lot of Marines. I went through the transition assistance program. Nothing very memorable about that. It seemed pretty basic at the time. You know, basic resume preparation and job finding skills. But I was lucky enough to secure a part-time job prior to getting out, or at least during my terminal leave, that led into another position of employment with a company that was doing Navy training videos at the time.
And then from there, walk us through a sequence of events of what jobs you had and how it led into your first entrepreneurial venture.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, my core competency was that of a combat photographer, motion media specialist. So I took those skills with me to the first company and was doing the video editing for these Navy training videos. I was really fortunate to work on some really great projects on board submarines, on board ships, creating training video for various systems. While I was at that company, I was actually doing some other freelance work on the side, including working for C-SPAN for a while in Washington, D.C. as a video editor again, and as a production coordinator for a company that was putting college lectures on. And but I had this nagging desire to start my own company. And in about 95, some of the technology started coming down in prices enough so that I could afford to buy my own video equipment. And I basically leveraged every credit card I had to buy a video editing suite, set it up in the basement of my house, and start editing for other video producers who needed those services.
Wow, how far technology has come these days, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Because that system that cost $50,000 back then, what we were doing on that system, you can do it on a $500 laptop today. So that actually was the writing on the wall for me. After I was in that video production business for a while, and I could see that the cost of this equipment is coming down drastically, and my clients are going to be able to do this on their own PC. So what am I going to do? I also happen to be reading a book at the time called The E-Myth. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, so I was reading The E-Myth, and it motivated me to try to build a company that could run without me, or at least wasn't totally dependent on my hourly skills. And so we started developing basically a presentation software which used streaming video synchronized with graphics and testing to be a distance learning program, and that was called IntelliShow. And we basically merged that company with a company out of Massachusetts at the time, out of New Hampshire, and worked together for about a year until the CEO that we hired decided he didn't need our services anymore, and basically terminated my employment.
So you merged or were acquired, and shortly after that, you were sent packing.
Exactly. That's exactly how it worked. And, I learned a really interesting lesson there because, you're not protected. You got to be careful that you are protected in that type of situation through contracts and so forth. Now, I was really fortunate to have about a 1-year employment agreement, and even though they didn't need my services anymore, they were required to pay me for the next year.
There you go.
So I saw that as a great opportunity to explore a new entrepreneurial venture. And having some family in the food business and in the restaurant business, I was really interested in looking at franchises. So I spent that year looking at all types of different franchises, from the service industry, junk removal was one, for example, all the way through, myriad of cleaning services, food businesses, and so forth. I finally landed on a restaurant concept that I was really excited about. I actually traveled out to Dallas, Texas to meet with these folks, and spent 2 days in a restaurant doing a live work experience, being evaluated by people, and then sat down with the CEO and the head of operations. And they said to me, "Paul, you seem like a good guy. You seem motivated. But, you're a technology guy and a Marine. We don't see the fit in the restaurant business. Since you don't have any experience, we don't think this is the right fit for you. So if you'd like to join us, go out and get some restaurant experience, come back.
Really?
If not, have a great day." So I was really determined. That's, I guess, something that I picked up from the Marine Corps. Really determined to see this through. And there happened to be a restaurant franchisee in my area who was opening a new store. So I went to him and said, "Hey, I need to get some restaurant experience. I'd like to be approved in the system. Can I come work for you?" He said, "Well, I don't have any positions available. My management staff's already filled out." I said, No problem. I'm already getting paid. You don't have to pay me.
I'll work for free.
I'll work for free.
That's what every employer wants to hear.
He took that deal. So I worked for him for about 3 months, helping to open that restaurant. And of course, in a franchise new store opening, all the corporate guys are there, all the franchisor guys are there, and they were able to see my work ethic in person, get to know me better, and work for a few months after that, and was eventually approved as a franchisee. And after I opened my first store, it was a home run store, and it was a great story. Worked out really well.
So you've had so that was a good experience with the whole franchising opportunity.
Yeah, I built. My goal was always to be a multi-unit operator, and I had my first store for about 6 years, and built 2 more after that. What I would say to anybody who's ever considered multi-store, and I've seen it happen over and over again, is, every store is not the same. So just because you have success in one store doesn't mean that you're going to have success in others. So caution is probably the word of the day when it comes to multi-unit operations. But overall, it's been a very good experience.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard about a lot of franchises is that you can't really, if you're ever going to make very much money, you're going to have to own at least 2 or 3 of them. You can't just make your money off of one, but I suppose that depends on the structure of the individual franchise.
That's a great comment, great observation. And that was one of the criteria that I had going in. I wanted to find a restaurant type, a prototype that had a high enough average unit volume sales that I could make a living off of one store. Because there are a lot of sub shops, for example, that their average unit volume is $400,000, $500,000 a year, and if you're going to make any good money, you do need to have multi units. So I see there are 3 big criteria when looking at a franchise. One of them is, do you like the concept? Is it something you're interested in doing? Number 2 is there geography available for you? That is, territory available where you want to live. And then number 3 is going to be the economics of the whole thing. Can you make money at it? And those were kind of the driving factors for me. And this particular concept, really met my needs.
So would you consider a franchise as a good option for a veteran looking to start their own business?
Joe, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. A franchise is really just an operational guide and a system that the franchisee is supposed to execute. It's a proven business system that has been successful for other folks. The franchisor has packaged it together. And if you can execute the system as designed, it should be successful. And that's what veterans do, or that's what we did in the military. We had a set of operational guidelines, and we work within those systems to achieve the goal. So I would say yes. Franchise is a very good fit for a veteran. The only downside is it doesn't allow for a lot of creativity because you are signing up to execute a system, the franchisor way. Now, that being said, there are a lot of great resources out there for veterans to get into franchising. A lot of franchisors have specific programs set up to incentivize veterans to apply. I believe that they are really considered to be preferred candidates. One of the great resources that you can find out there is put together by the International Franchise Association, and it's a subgroup of the IFA. It's called VETFRAN, VETFRAN. And if you just search on that, you can find a lot of franchisors that participate in veteran-specific programs.
Yeah, I think VETFRAN, or it might have been a variation of that name, spoke at the Army ACAP separations class that I went through a little over a year ago, talking about franchising. And I've always looked into I've never done a franchise, but I know a lot of friends that have. I know a guy that one of my last squadrons was doing, him and his wife were doing Moe's franchise, the Mexican burrito place. Actually, there was a couple guys when Moe's was coming out really big. And it's a good way to cut your teeth on the entrepreneurial world if you've never done anything before, and especially if you just don't have one of those ideas. But sometimes in franchising, though, you got to be careful you're not just buying yourself a job. Is there going to be increasing equity or value in the whole thing over a long time if you do execute properly, that kind of thing?
I agree completely. And I would also add that if you are considering franchising, you really need to have a good set of eyes look over that franchise agreement, because the franchise agreements are usually set up in favor of the franchisor. They have a lot of rules and regulations on how you can operate your franchise, and typically they get paid first. That is that if you're out there working really hard and making weekly sales, the franchisor is going to take their royalties and possibly even marketing fee off the top before you even see a profit. So that's really important, because I can't tell you how many people I've had come up to me and really believe that a franchise is a money box, if you will, or a money-making machine. And that's not exactly true. You have to run it. And it's not really for a passive investor. If you want to make it successful, you need to be very involved in the operation. And, it can get overwhelming, and it can be just a job for you. It could be just buying a job. Or, if you get into multi-unit, for example, you can be supervising, several units at a time. But it's really not just an investment. It's more of an operator type of scenario.
Yeah, because some of them, depending on what it is, can definitely become overwhelming. And everybody always asks, what's the latest and greatest franchise to go into? And of course, the correct way to answer that is, well, that depends on who you are and what you're looking for, because it has to be a right fit for the individual.
Exactly.
So any other lessons with as far as franchising is concerned before we want to move on to your next venture?
No, I think that's it. I think franchising is a great opportunity for veterans. They need to do their homework, fully vet the franchisor and the franchise agreement, and make sure that fits with their lifestyle and their desire. All
right. Well, you want to talk about your latest project, the Entrepreneur Warrior?
Sure, I'd love to. So, we talked about the fact that I've kind of transitioned into the franchise business. I've been in that about 10 years now. But I have had this desire to kind of go back to my roots, which were technology and media. And when I started to think about, what kind of experience I have and the kind of things that get me motivated, did the typical piece of paper with two columns. On one hand, you have the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're interested in doing. And on the other side, you have the skills and abilities that you've obtained. And you kind of draw lines in between them and try to come up with, your zone of excellence or your zone of expertise, something that kind of fits between those two sides of the paper. And for me, I've been a huge fan of podcasts for a long time. And of course, I have a special place in my heart for all those who have served in the military. And I've got my entrepreneurial experience. So I kind of put those together, and I came up with the idea of the Entrepreneur Warrior, which is much like your show, helping out our fellow veterans, brothers and sisters, to become entrepreneurs by inspiring them through interviews with other successful entrepreneurs.
Right. And, that's where I came up with the idea for Veteran on the Move. Was my last year or two in the Marine Corps. I was working on my graduate degree in entrepreneurship, and one of the classes I was taking was, start your own business within 100 days. And I ended up coming up with this idea for a nonprofit, Speaking of Heroes. And so I actually started the nonprofit, and going through all that whole process, and then actually retiring and coming into the civilian world, the light bulb came on one day. I was like, I really discovered a lot of great, people, programs, and resources during those couple of years that I never knew anything about, before I started. And now that I'm gotten to this point and I'm looking back, I'm thinking there's probably a lot of veterans out there that don't know these things are out there. I mean, you hear about them, and you kind of, there's something there, but you don't know the details. You don't know the name of the program or what they specialize in. And so I discovered so much along my journey that I wanted to go back and start the podcast to do the same thing for others. And, so that's why we're here talking.
Well, it's really funny because we kind of met through our common interest in podcasting. And it's kind of self-fulfilling when you get into this. I've come across so many resources now for veteran entrepreneurs that I didn't know existed. When I first came up with the concept, I thought I had a unique idea. And then I come to meet you and a bunch of other people who are doing the similar thing. And I think it's great because it really kind of validates the fact that there's a need out there for this kind of thing. And, our challenge, I guess, for you and for me is to reach that person who's seeking this type of information and reach out to that audience and let them know we're out here. I think there's, a lot of guys probably don't even know that there are so many resources available to them.
And the fact is, veterans make great entrepreneurs. Matter of fact, almost 1 out of 2 veterans go into business for themselves, and it's almost twice as much as the rest of the population. I think it goes back to what we were talking about with veterans have a lot of those resident skills that allow them to be a successful entrepreneur. Well, they can roll with the punches. They can deal with failure. They can deal with change. They can deal with the stress. They can deal with structure. They can deal with systems and planning and execution and debriefing and going back and readdressing things and doing it again. And also the stick-to-itiveness of I'm not going to quit until this works. I'm not going to, failure's not an option mentality.
That's right. That's an amazing statistic, 1 out of 2. And I think I heard in one of your previous shows that I was listening to, that didn't you have a statistic about the success rate of veteran entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's, I want to say it was like they're 35% more likely to be successful.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's significant.
And you take your scenario, for example, you're a retired Marine. I'm not retired. I don't have a pension. But that's a huge benefit to being able to retire, at a fairly young age, compared to other situations that people might be in, and gives you a little bit of a buffer to be able to work on entrepreneurial endeavors by having that retirement and those healthcare benefits available to you.
So what kind of big picture advice do you have for the veteran out there, or the folks that are still on active duty, but they know their time's coming to an end, eventually, as it does with us all? What big picture advice would you have for those folks that are looking to get out and start their own business?
Well, first of all, of course, I would like them to visit our website, the Entrepreneur Warrior, and we're developing a list of 100 resources, top resources for the Entrepreneur Warrior. And of course, your podcast is going to be right up there.
Excellent.
Right up there as an excellent resource.
All right.
So there are so many government programs available out there, websites, directories, podcasts. I have 5 main categories that we're developing this resources into. So I would guide them there as a starting point. I'd guide them back to your website to listen to past episodes. You've got some amazing guests on, some really inspiring stories. But bottom line, I think, is that my bottom line piece of advice is take action. That is, do something small every day. Because if you just dream every day, it's not going to happen. But you can take small steps. Small steps are, educating yourself on entrepreneurship. Whether it's downloading our guide or listening to one of your podcasts, or going on to the Small Business Administration Veterans page and educating yourself there. So there's a lot of education that can be done even before someone gets out of the military, so that they're better prepared. But it's put a goal out there and take small steps every single day, because if you don't work towards that goal, it's never going to happen.
Great advice. The 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step.
Yep, small steps every day. That's right.
Yeah, and and even once you're in it, you still have to, every day. A day that's not scheduled or planned is probably going to be a wasted day. You got to have those things that you are set out to accomplish every day. And I tell you, that's one of the things, coming out of the military, it's not necessarily a you're used to being told what to do every day. It's not quite like that, but there is the military, the institutionalism that goes along with that, a lot of government influence involved in the military. We really come from a very structured, where you may not be told what to do every single day or every minute of your time, but for the most part, there's a plan already in place. And the boss, the CO, your unit leader, you're at their mercy to go in the direction they want to go. And sometimes you kind of push back or get resisted or get tired of that after spending many years in the military. But in some ways, you underestimate how much that influences your day-to-day thinking. And so when you get out and you want to become this entrepreneur or whatever that may be in your mind, and you start realizing, okay, what am I going to do what should I be doing tomorrow? And there's nobody else out there to tell you what you should be doing tomorrow. It's all up to you. And some guys never quite get that. They just don't do anything tomorrow. Whereas I've started, I'm like, okay, I gotta define what my criteria for success is just tomorrow, because I've got the day off. And if I don't do something, then I'm not getting anywhere towards my entrepreneurial goals. And oftentimes, even granted, you still have the IRS and you might have the obvious criteria for success, like, am I making money? But it's really a lot more to it than that. And I'm sure you've experienced talking about franchising. At least it's a structure and a system that's already in place, and success is probably already defined for you, and that helps to transition into the civilian business ownership world instead of just starting with a blank slate, coming right out of the military.
I think you make an excellent point. And what that makes me think of when I was listening to your point, Joe, is accountability. So in the Marine Corps, or in the military,
Right.
We had a lot of accountability. And so one of the ways that you can create accountability for yourself is to be involved in a mentoring or a coaching program. And that's another category of the list that we're building for top resources. And I know that you've had interviews with business coaches on your show before.
Right.
So there's some great resources there. But there's a lot of them that don't cost anything. So you can get into a mentoring or a coaching program. I think you've probably even been involved in some of them yourself, haven't you?
Right, I have, and I'm looking at starting one here at Veteran on the Move if I develop enough interest. But coaching and mentoring and mastermind groups are really big nowadays, and they're a part of the entrepreneurial craze mainly because of the things I just spoke of. If you're a one-man show entrepreneur, you got to go find mentors or peers or somebody to talk to bounce ideas off of, because face it, you can't plan in a vacuum, like we used to say in the military. But because if you plan in a vacuum, you've missed all the input from all the other key players, and it's like that in this solo entrepreneurial world. You've got to get other people's input on stuff and bounce ideas and trade feedback back and forth. So you got to go look for those kinds of things.
I agree 100% with everything you said. And I would just add that probably one of the biggest downsides of being an entrepreneur is not always having that accountability. If you own your own company and you don't have anybody to be accountable towards, it's easy to, sometime either backslide or take a day off. It's really nice. A lot of times, if you got someone looking over your shoulder, you're pushing ahead every single day and
Right.
grinding away.
Yeah, you have to figure out ways to hold yourself accountable. Either put somebody in charge of that, or you put your goals and desires out there, and whether it's your spouse or your fellow entrepreneurs, you put it out there and tell them, look, I want to be held accountable to this. And so when you have one of those days where you're like, hey, I just take the day, I better not, because I got to meet with my mentor on Friday, and I know that my mentor is going to ask me if I did these things, and so I don't want to be telling him I didn't get it done.
It's funny as I've gone through this process, and I've come across so many people who are focused on veteran entrepreneurship. It makes me think there's probably room for a veteran entrepreneur mastermind group.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's out there on my website, trying to build interest for that kind of a thing right now. And might want to consider starting one up yourself.
I think I'll just join yours.
That's even better. All right. Well, Paul, we're getting close to the end of our time here. I'd like to give you the last word, and also another chance for you to put in a plug for your business and how we can contact you.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. Once again, I really appreciate this. I guess the one thing I really want to say to you and to all your listeners is thank you for your service. I am, really grateful for everyone who has served this country in the military. It's a huge sacrifice, and it's my pleasure to do what I can to help those folks transition into being entrepreneurs. And I really appreciate the opportunity you've given me today. I would invite all of your listeners to, check out our website. It's called theentrepreneurwarrior.com. We expect to launch our first episode in the end of March. Got a nice guest list that we're working on. In the meantime, we are reserving spots for our top 100 resources for entrepreneur warriors. So I would invite them to join our list. And I'd also say, since you do have a lot of entrepreneurs who are out there that listen to your show regularly, if they want to submit a resource to our list, it's the same website. Just scroll all the way down, submit their resource. And we'd love to consider that in our top 100 resources for entrepreneur warriors.
All right. Well, great, Paul. Thanks for your service also, and the service for any of our listeners out there. It's always greatly appreciated. And appreciate you having you on the show also, and sharing your great stories of entrepreneurial success.
Thank you very much. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. I'm out. The Top 7 Paths to Freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com, or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.